tea and TV. What's the book better? We're here at the Augusta-Richmond County Public Library discussing Lovecraft Country, Episode 6, Meet Me in Deagu. I'm USA Today best-selling author Olivia Gaines, and I'm here with my library pals.
Your favorite librarian in training, Georgina Lewis.
Hello, I'm Leah Holloway, and I'm the Public Relations Assistant.
Well, there's a lot to talk about in this episode. Let's crack open the book and let's get at it. Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the storytelling aspects of allegory, foreshadowing, and flashback? Or do we just want to start with the nine-tailed fox?
I think that we should start with the allegory and that because her character, Jiha, actually encompasses all these things, and I think it'll help people understand more as we talk about her.
Okay. Well, let's dig into that. Allegory is a literary device where it uses the narration of the character, place, or events to deliver a broader understanding of the message. Now, you have the episode named Meet Me in Deagu, which was an allegory to Meet Me in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And I found it so ironic that Jiha was totally obsessed with Judy Garland, not understanding the journey that she underwent as a child actor, being sexually assaulted, being given uppers by the Hollywood elite in order to have her perform like they wanted her to. When she couldn't sleep, they gave her downers. And at the end of the episode, the voiceover that you hear is actually Judy Garland in her, towards the end of her final days in her documentary, where she wasn't even really coherent because she was so spaced out on the drugs. And yet you have a lot of these people who just completely fantasized about Judy Garland and what she stood for. Your feedback, ladies?
Absolutely. I feel like when you live in another country and you're watching something from a different place where there's different things going on there, you have this image. And so I feel like Jiha had an image of what it was like to be in America or to be in St. Louis. Right. And that's something that, she dreams about. She dreams about being happy and maybe possibly having a life like that, possibly. But it was so interesting because, in the final scenes of that episode, they did go, it was Judy Garland speaking in her documentary, but she mainly talked about how people wanted to change her and how people wanted her to be different. And of course, Jiha has been upset because her mother, or Uma, has wanted to change her and she doesn't want to change.
Uma's got issues, but we can come back to Uma. We're going to come back to Uma because I want to talk about this mama. Go ahead.
But I feel very much the same way as you two. When I happen to be a big Judy Garland fan, so I thought it was really interesting that this character Jiha was, like you said, so obsessed with her. And I was thinking, like, you could slowly see how in the films that she kept choosing to watch, it very much kind of told the story of not only Judy in there and how she sees Judy, but how she saw herself too. Right. Her reflection of what she thought of herself directly correlated with how Judy, by the time you get to the interview, saw herself. Like someone pushing you around, Uma being demanding, which Judy Garland's mother was also a very demanding woman as well, and wanting her to just become this person. You hear Uma always say, well, 10 men tonight, and you're like, first of all, you're all shocked because you're like, 10 men? Wow. 10 men. The thing that, piqued me was, in the episode, she was like, she says, well, Mom wants me to bring home men. And my first thought was plural. I'm like, plural?
Plural.
Like, you want to bring home men? Because I think what most people were thinking was like, oh, I want to get married. Well, Oma wants Jiha to get married and to settle down or whatever, but you find out it's much darker than that. And I just thought that was just a wild ride. I think we're ready to get into Oma. Right about that.
Much darker. That's an understatement. The whole scenario of the comfort women and these Korean women being forced into this role of servitude by the Japanese in order to provide comfort to their soldiers was one thing. But then for Uma to decide, okay, I gave birth to a child out of wedlock, and so now in order to handle this shame, I'm going to marry this man who's marrying me to get to my daughter, and I know this. And I'm just sitting there, I'm almost traumatized watching the episode. And then the whole scene unfolds, but I'm going to stop there and we're going to talk about
I feel like Uma was a deeply complicated character. Of course, there's some straightforward things that you see about her. You know, there's the demanding, there's the urgency. But for me, Uma is a character, like many of the characters in this series, a character of regret. She regrets letting that happen to her daughter. That's why she goes and seeks out the shaman to summon the Gumyo. The Gumyo is the nine-tailed fox. That's who we know as Jia. So Jia technically is she's encased inside of this woman's daughter. Yes. She's grown up inside of this body, and all Uma wants is a chance to, I guess, raise her daughter the way she wanted to raise her before everything happened to her. And Gia's contrasting that by saying, basically, well, I'm here now. I'm very much here now, and no matter how you slice it and dice it, no matter what you're looking for me to become human, you're my mom whether or not I'm this creature or whether I turn into a human, either way. And I think Oma's just like, she wants the opportunity to get back to the little girl that all this abuse happened to, and it's just like, you lost your chance at that.
I totally agree that Uma is a very complicated character. Just like many of the other characters in this series, I thought it was very interesting that in this episode, the key word that I heard many times was monster. Yes. You're a monster. And probably like one of the most, well, at least one of the scenes that moved me a lot was when, you know, her and Atticus are about to, you know, have a little night of romance, and she ends up coming into the room. And when she doesn't end up killing him, you know, Uma sits there and says, you're a monster. And it's like, how am I a monster when you set yourself up to marry this man who did these bad things to your daughter, but you want to bring your daughter back now? But it also reminds me of the scene where her and Atticus talk to each other, and she says, you know, we call each other monsters, but it doesn't mean, even though we do monstrous things, it doesn't mean that we're bad people.
There's a lot of foreshadowing that has happened. And foreshadowing is when the storyteller gives you hints of what's to come. And some of the previous episodes you saw when they were at the mansion that he was fighting this Korean character, and you didn't really know if it was a man or a woman. And here you know that her story is a lot bigger in this whole thing. How does this coincide with the book? Is this in the book? Oh, she's smiling.
Yes. Well, no. I'll talk about the book in a second, but I did get excited when we saw Gia's character, because I was like, okay, that's definitely who was in the room when he was in the mansion. And then I was also like, that's also the alien from the very first episode, the red alien.
Yes, it was.
So I was like, okay, so she's definitely important within this show, so we're gonna see more of her. Yes. The book, none of that is in the book. She does not exist in the book. There is no background story of Atticus at war, none of that. And I actually skimmed back through, because I don't even remember reading about him wanting to enlist, in which in the show they say he enlists to get away from his father. And I was like, I don't remember reading that, and I went to look for it and I couldn't find it. I don't believe in the book that he enlisted.
That's interesting. I picked up the book. I'm not going to read until I get through all of the episodes.
Same.
Because I don't want to be at war with myself as I'm watching and expecting, anticipating, and it's not there.
Yes.
As you said, that first chapter is 107 pages or something like
it's
that.
It's long.
A little verbose, but it's okay. It's okay. Georgina?
Man, I'm a little sad that it's not in the book, but I mean, I understand too that the creators of the show do have to make this work. They do have to explain some things to you. I was going to ask you, did they even have any mention of him being drafted in the book?
That's my thing. They don't really talk about it. Atticus, he mentions like, oh, this is my army uniform, or I was in this, I was in the 24th regiment, and like he'll mention certain things like that. But then, of course, white Americans back then, it's like, I don't care if you fought for me, like I'm still gonna treat you like this. And that's also mentioned in the show. Jiha asked him, and the Korean American soldier, why do you fight for a country that doesn't care for you? So that's kind of mentioned in the book, just in a different way.
Okay.
But they don't mention anything about him being drafted. They really don't talk about his experience in Korea at all.
Oh wow! But they do at least. Did they even say that he goes to Korea in the book?
So.
Okay.
That sounds like, yeah.
So in the book, they say that he left the army and went to Florida. Now, thinking about it right now, I do not remember them mentioning Korea at all. Just that he went to war, and that's it.
And with
so
the timeline,
I'm just looking at the year. It's like you can kind of figure out what war was going on. But with this episode, it was nice for me because as the reader, I'm sitting here like, okay, how's this episode going to be different from the book? Oh, they changed this character. They changed that person and made them a woman. They did this. They did that. Oh, that's not how Ruby acted here. That's not what really happened to Letitia. Like, what's up with this Indiana Jones episode? Like, it wasn't even really like that. It was really refreshing for me to be able to see something new. I was like, okay, good. Like, I don't have any expectations with this episode. Okay. So I like what the creator did. I thought it was a great story.
I thought it was interesting that they basically put his backstory in chapter 6. Usually if you're reading the book, the backstory comes about chapter 3. But what the storytellers are doing in this in this situation, they're making you like Atticus. They're making you be invested in Atticus. I was talking earlier about the people online in the Lovecraft groups who are upset that, oh, why is she with Letty's man? And I was like, okay, that's a flashback to things that happened before. And when you see that version of Atticus, if we had been introduced to him as the guy who's pulling people's teeth to torture them, we wouldn't want him to succeed. We would be like, I don't care about this guy.
Yeah. And I also think that it's important to tell this part of the story because you don't get it in the book. I think it's important to see Atticus's experience. Another thing I think that is important is, America is always painted as the hero and as the good guys. I think it's important to tell the story that we weren't always the good guys, and things like this did happen during times of war.
Things like this also happened when there wasn't times of war.
Yeah, true.
My husband was stationed in Korea, and he said they did have classes that explains all of the Korean history, the conquered women, all of it. Yeah, because I'm sitting there looking at him, and he's like, well, I lived in Korea for a year, so I know all of these things. And I'm like, they gave you a class in this? He's like, yes. As a soldier, yeah.
Wow.
I think it's really important to understand the history of things in general, but definitely when it comes to how people treat one another, why there are some stereotypes and hang-ups between different people of different countries and different things like that. One thing that we were talking about a little bit beforehand was actually the story of the Gumyo. So the story of the Gumyo itself is, you see it as the Korean story. That's how it's presented. It's the Korean War. Jihad is Korean. And I thought it was interesting because there's more than one lore about it. The lore that the story decided to take was that she takes 1,000 souls. She becomes human. There's also a flip side to this, which is also considered creditable, which is she doesn't take souls for 1,000 years and she still becomes human. the end result is that the Gumiho is always supposed to yearn to become human. But we talked about how the Gumiho is seen in different countries.
Okay.
When we looked at like Japan and stuff like that, they're not really seen as this malevolent being essentially. But if you think about like China, you think about Korea, kind of makes sense. So I thought it was interesting, those contrasting stories, because when you think about relationships that Korea has to Japan and how they have relationship with China and how those tensions are there and how that one story out of China has evolved over time. I thought it was interesting because you have one country that they're like, no, Gumiho is awful, it's a bad thing, you know, and it makes you think, is it because of the years of history that they've had, these three countries in particular with so much conflict that's happened between them, that they've come out and Japan's like, yeah, this is great, this is wonderful, and then Korea's like, no, not so much. So,
Okay.
so those are little things that, like, I feel like they're little nuggets that they dropped for you to go look for, and I think that's what we all enjoy about the show. It's like it's gonna make you think and go search and research
and wonder about things. One of the legends said that the Gumiho, or the nine-tailed fox, they came during times of war, and that they represented peace and prosperity amongst the land. So I thought it was interesting that she's there during a time of war
as a nurse.
Now
Yes, as a nurse.
the folklore that I read was that the Gumiho would come and eat the livers and hearts of men.
There's different stories.
Right.
There's lots of different stories because it's just ancient folklore. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. So it's kind of like how we've got vampires and witches, and then, you know, if you go down to Central America, they've got the chupacabra. So they've got all these different legends. So that's like the legend over there.
Okay.
What was interesting about this show, though, is that they kind of took a little of everything
and mixed it in
and stuff like that, and I really kind of enjoyed that because, you know, not all of us have just told a different version of this Gumiho story, you know.
But it's the same thing when you're watching the show. What you're looking at, what you're seeing, and how it relates to you kind of ties into what you know about African American history, or what you know about military history, or how you feel about relationships and love. Like I said, a lot of people were upset that, you know, even though it was in his past, seeing him with another woman really jolted them out of the story, and they were upset about it. But I was kind of upset that he was so cold in taking these orders and executing the orders, and then he does this beautiful thing for her where he sets up this private screening basically, and then he's tender with her and gentle, and they're like, well, it was his first time, and I'm like, but yeah, it was Letty's first time too.
Yeah, I'm like, also he just like helped pull someone's teeth out just a minute ago. Yeah, it's, you know, they really try to make the story like, you know, Tick was abused by Montrose, and so he was trying to get away. And it's like he's letting out all that aggression during war. But I don't know if me knowing what he did to my friend, I don't know if I'd have been able to keep the tails in. I don't know.
I have one question though, like, is Atticus likable in the book? I'm gonna tell you, as a viewer, my care for Atticus probably dropped off by episode 2. Like, I really was just like, Atticus to me is just like, I know we talk about him being like back then like a man's man. I was like, I'm not
He's a bull in a china shop.
Look, me and Atticus, I just, to me, I'm more invested of the people around him, so to speak, because I just see like how he is almost like a symbol of trouble. Like, if Atticus is there, everything that I feel like is kind of bad is attracted to him. Like, he found in all of Korea, in all of the war, he meets a Gumiho. Of all the people.
But then you have to wonder if he is actually attracting the negative to what's inside of him.
Yeah, because at the end of the episode, the shaman does say, like, you haven't seen the dark yet to Gia. And I'm just like, I wonder if they were supposed to meet.
I think they were supposed to meet.
I do think that.
And I think that she was supposed to take his soul in order to prevent what is going to happen.
I don't know about that though.
You don't know about that.
I'll say you why. Because in the episode, she mentions to the shaman, she said, I saw him die, but not by me. That kind of stuck out to me, because I'm like, if that was his time to go, I'm pretty sure if it flashed forward, I'm pretty sure the shaman would have been like, you should have killed him, so you could have become human, because he literally would have been the last one.
Right.
But the fact that she kind of basically says, like, you have a lot more death to see.
Yeah.
You have a lot more things to see. It makes me kind of wonder, like I said, pulling back up to the Gumio thing, and the one that I read, it's supposed to be 1,000 souls over the course of 1,000 years. So basically, simple math, 1 soul a year. But remember, she's been racking up people in short periods of time. And I'm wondering if in that case, they're tying that to her mother's penance, or her having to continue to see all these deaths. If that ties into her, for her sacrifice to become a human, for, you know, the one that she quote unquote loves to react this way, to go through such a journey, and for her to see all of that journey. And then what does that mean for Atticus, who obviously, you know, he was scared to death. And so when he gets this warning, you know, after this, oh baby, there's nothing that you could possibly do, or whatever, except for tails coming out of your face. You know, and you know, the first episode, you know, taking it back, you know, she's just like, you shouldn't have gone home. And you know, he just like, get it, like, you know, and then frantically going back to episode 5, after he's decoded what's on his ring, he calls her again, and he's just like, how did you know? I'm just like, sir, you saw tails coming out of her face. You don't think she would have possibly known about that? And so I just think it's really interesting. I don't think that she's going to kill him. I really think that she is somehow going to be able to see and hear the story unfold of what is going to happen to Atticus.
Do you think that she's going to come to America?
Yes.
I do too. I feel like she's going to come.
So?
Because she just is an important part of the story. Again, like, she was the alien at the beginning. Okay. Then she came out like as one of the little memories that were in the house, and I just think she's going to be there. I think she's supposed to, and now that he believes her, I think she's going to come over there, and I think she cares for him. I think she's going to try to save him. So I think she is going to find a way to get over to America. Did you think she was a spider at first? I just want to know, because
I did too. I definitely thought it was a spider. And
I just saw, like, I thought they were like legs, and I was waiting for like 8 black eyes to come out. So I just wanted to know what you thought.
I honestly was terrified of that.
I didn't know what that was.
I was terrified of that because I saw the furry legs, and I am definitely afraid of spiders. And I was just like, please don't let this be a spider episode.
Yes, I was like, oh my god, like, she's about to eat him. Like, it's over. I just want to know what everyone else thought, because then when they were like tails, I was like, oh, so she's a monkey. Like, she's some kind of monkey.
Not a monkey.
So many, and the one that came out of her ear is the one that really just kind of. Because if you watched American Gods, when you first see, and she's ingesting.
So what I said was, and that's literally what I said. I was just like, this is about to be like some American God stuff going on. That's literally what I said. But then when the tail started coming out, I was like, oh, she's not sucking them up. Like, that's not gonna happen.
I was sitting on the edge of my recliner, and I was just trying to make myself breathe, because I'm like, what am I watching? And then my phone starts to light up, and you can see all the Twitter feed. The people are like, what's this? What are we watching? But I gotta go back for one step.
Okay.
Usually, from a storyteller's perspective, when you name your characters, it has some kind of significance. Now, there are 3 well-known men named Atticus in history. Of course, you have the military general. You also have Atticus, the Canadian poet, who wrote The Dark Between the Stars. Let that sink in. And The Truth About Magic. And both of those became New York Times bestsellers in poetry.
Wow.
The other, of course, is Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. A man who was brave, honorable, and respectful to others. He was wise, compassionate, and thoughtful. Okay.
So it's funny, in the book, Atticus, I think in the show, his name is Atticus Freeman.
Okay.
And in the book, his name is Atticus Turner.
As in Nat Turner?
That's kind of what I was making a reference to whenever I read it. But
Interesting.
I thought it was interesting that they changed the names in the book. Also, Montrose and George are actually half brothers in the book, so they have different names. But in the show, everyone is named Freeman.
Of course.
So
Of course.
I didn't really look into why the names were changed, but hey, they changed names, they changed sexes, they changed a lot.
They changed a lot.
Yeah, so just wanted to add that his name was different in the book.
Okay, good.
Do we have any closing thoughts?
I am ready for Gia's arrival to America. I feel like it is definitely going to happen because I'm wondering how she's going to see all these deaths and how would they have to do with Atticus himself. I wanted to see what happens when Gia, when I feel like she comes to America, meets Letty. So I'm definitely ready for episode 7 so that we can get a little bit more information.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what this love triangle is. I'm interested to see what happens with this, and also I just think it's very interesting that, you know, he had relations with Letty, he had relations with Gia, and
there was another woman in that image.
Yes, in the
flesh.
And so that was in the future though. So I just wondered, that was when he got back.
Was that when he went to Florida before he came back to Chicago to get with Letty?
I think that it was before he went to Florida, if I can remember correctly. But yeah, they didn't show the woman. She was kind of like blurred out. But he was with another woman, so I didn't know if that was him just trying to, like, you know, forget about everything that happened, and maybe that was just like some kind of one night stand, or if that's going to be important. But
I think it's going to be important because she is a deep complected woman. Because a lot of the chatter on social media, they had the image of Letty and the image of Gia side by side, saying, well, he has a type. And then you have this image of him in bed with this deep complected woman, and you're like, he's a man. He don't have a type. He's a man.
What if everyone just ends up pregnant?
Oh gosh.
Okay. You have to drop the comments in the section.
And what are your questions? What are your hypotheses, so to speak? Do you think Gia is actually going to come to America? Do you think he's just going to keep calling her South Korea?
I think she's coming to America.
Yeah. She has to. You can't just drop off after that episode.
I know. There is so much more to her story, and I'm here for it.
Same.
Well, thank you for joining us for Tea and TV. Was the book better? We were talking about episode 6, Meet Me in Deagu of Lovecraft Country. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. Have a great one.